Welcome to the Smart Connector podcast and the Smart Connector group. It's Thursday evening and I've got a great guest for you tonight. Welcome, Ian Denny.
Hi.
So Ian's a LinkedIn expert and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So although we're live on Facebook, it's going to be all about LinkedIn. So let's start before we get into it, Ian. What makes you an expert on LinkedIn? Let's hear all about you and what your background is and how you came to this.
It's a distinguished career in geekhood. I ran an IT company for many years, so whenever I tackle anything, and LinkedIn is no different, I need to know how it works. So I spent a lot of time reading like LinkedIn engineer blogs.
Yeah.
Requires a higher level of translation. So that gave me some clues as to how the thing works. But a lot of it's to do with testing and experimentation. So, and over the years, I've kind of I've done this for CEOs as a ghostwriter, where I kind of become them.
Yes,
and that's an interesting challenge in itself, because you need to actually understand that individual, what drives them. You need to know off the wall things, like what pets they have, where they go on holiday, ask them questions like, what would you do if you won the lottery, that kind of thing. And because you have to reflect them.
Yes.
So that's one part of what I've done. And another part is actually teaching people how LinkedIn works with a view to basically winning clients from it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, LinkedIn is the B2B platform, so people are on there to win clients. And there's definitely a good way to approach LinkedIn and a wrong way. And of course, we'll be going into some of that tonight. But how long have you been doing this for then, Ian? How long have you been, really a LinkedIn trainer?
It's probably I've been heavily involved in LinkedIn for probably about 5 years now. I've obviously been on LinkedIn for a lot longer.
Yeah.
But it's probably for about 5 years since I first kind of discovered my first viral post.
Yes.
And I needed to know why that happened.
Yes.
And that's kind of what sparked the journey, because before that, I'd probably made the same mistake a lot of people make, which is being a little bit too formal and corporate and traditional LinkedIn, if you like.
Yeah.
So then when I became a little bit more human,
yes,
the views started to go up.
Yes.
Started to happen. So
yes,
about 5 years really since I've been really using it in anger.
a
long time in internet years.
Yeah, that's true, and that's a really important point, because I notice people just write about business, or write about their business, not even business. They write about their business, about how good their business is, what they've been doing in their business that day, what people that might be their ideal clients might ask them about their business, but they very rarely get personal. And like you, I found that when I get personal and when I talk about casual topics, all of a sudden the views go right up and the engagement goes right up. And I think people, they're on there partly because they want to socialize and they want to mingle in a community. I mean, it's a social platform, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think another one of the mistakes people make is that you go on LinkedIn with a purpose. The purpose is to generate business. And so because you're in an unnatural environment, you're not in front of a real person.
Yeah.
You tend to behave differently than you would in person. And really, you can't shortcut the relationship building phase. If all you ever talk about is your business, and sell the business, then very quickly people start to scroll past your posts.
Yeah.
Besides that, there is actually a spam filter on LinkedIn, and it's got 3 decisions it makes immediately after posting. And if it detects too much sales language, it downgrades its progress in the newsfeed.
Yeah.
So you've got the LinkedIn algorithm and the human algorithm, because the human algorithm scrolls past sales messages typically.
Yep.
But spam
So,
filtering,
yeah, so that algorithmic spam filter, let's just say.
yeah.
So what kind of phrases would it detect? Would it be things like click the link below, or what would it be looking for?
It's typically the same things that an email spam filter looks for. It's
Hmm.
things like phone numbers, external links, phrases that call for more information, or anything that is a call to action would
Uh-huh.
typically, I believe, I can't categorically state that, but if you read the LinkedIn Engineers blog, there is an article on there, but it's probably about 4 or 5 years ago, which explains the spam filter.
Uh-huh.
And it has three classifications. It's either spam, in which case it's immediately downgraded. It's suspect, which means it will show it to a small selection of your first degree connections to assess their reaction. If
Yeah.
the reaction is good, it can overturn the original decision
Yes.
and be freed again once more into the news feed. Or it's actually classed as clear, in which case it depends on the quality of your content and your message.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, I mean it's amazing when you do get those viral posts though, isn't it? And I know, one of mine went viral recently, and it was a poll, and I talk about it quite a lot, but it was, should men call women mate, right? That was just what it was. And the amazing thing, it was just so much fun because LinkedIn decided to push it out all over the world, and you got all these like people from Australia saying, well, we call everybody mate, and people from the US saying, mate, is that like bro? And it
yeah,
was so funny. Then you got all these different people in the UK and talking about their kind of regional, their regional pet names, if you like. So it just turned into a really, really fun debate. And it was amazing. 80,000 views. And
yeah.
isn't that funny? It had nothing to do with my business at all. My business could have been anything.
Well, no, but it's you're actually starting a conversation, and some of those people could be in your target market. They
Yeah.
know you, and really, that's the kind of conversation you would have at a networking event, isn't it?
Well,
Uh,
a dinner party. I just
yeah,
thought, this is a kind of dinner party, or it's just a conversation that you might have with somebody if they're, if they're just, you meet them out for a dog walk or something like that. Just the kind of thing that you would chat about with anybody, isn't it?
yeah, and then what you have to do is exchange business cards,
Hmm.
and you do that by connecting with those people. So when you look at the people who've voted on your poll, they've liked or they've commented on your post, you could actually decide to connect with some of the people that are second degree connections.
Yes.
When you make somebody a first degree connection, they are much more likely to see your future posts in the news feed, particularly as there has been interaction between you. Because they've commented on your post or voted on a poll, you've now programmed the LinkedIn newsfeed with the second part of the equation, if you like, and they will see your future posts as well.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. So let's talk about hashtags, Ian. Should you have a personal hashtag? I mean, I do. I use my hashtag, the Smart Connector, but is it a good idea? And if so, why?
I think so, yeah, because it's a great way of bringing together a community of people. So if you want to
Hmm.
use your own personal hashtag, then people can follow it, and they are then more likely to see posts of that hashtag in their newsfeed. So it's a good idea to do that. There's a lot of conflicting debate about the use of hashtags, but some
Ah.
of the most recent research I've seen suggests that using 3 hashtags is about right.
Hmm.
More than that, and it tends to negatively impact the post. And as far as I can remember from the research I read, that was based on something like 5,000 analyzed posts.
Okay.
It seems to be the optimal number.
Three hashtags. Okay. Because sometimes you see a lot of people use a lot more, don't they? And for example, on Instagram, I know that you can use a lot and nobody's going to penalize you, but all the platforms are different, aren't they? So you just have to learn, you have to learn what works on LinkedIn, don't you? If you're going to be active there. So 3 hashtags.
Yeah, 3 hashtags looks about right. It doesn't dominate the post. Sometimes when you see somebody using, dozens of hashtags, it's almost like a cry for attention.
Yeah.
And they're actually tagging in individuals as well as hashtagging the post. And they're doing it in the body context as well. And you kind of lose the message. You lose the humanity of the message if you go too far with tagging and hashtags.
Yeah. So why do people tag other people in their posts? Obviously, if the post isn't about them, because that's a very common thing that people do. I don't do it unless, of course, if I released this podcast interview, I would tag you in, but I don't routinely tag other people in if the post isn't about them. So why do people do that?
Well, I can understand the motivation. It's like you could craft a post which would be appealing to somebody like Richard Branson and tag him in.
Right.
And if he actually got up off his deck chair on Necker Island and read your post and liked it or commented on it, then that's going to expose your post to millions of people. So people often tag in LinkedIn superstars or celebrities or, famous people from the world of business in the hope that it might get that reaction, which would then send their post viral.
Okay.
But you've got to look at the opposite effect. It's to a lot of people, it's quite an obvious cry for attention.
Yeah.
And does it really positively impact your own personal brand?
Yes.
You could argue the opposite. But I would tend to tag people when it's relevant, when I require their input, and I probably wouldn't tag somebody I don't know.
Yes.
I need to know them, really. I did go through a phase where I was tagged into posts almost constantly. And it
gets a bit annoying after a while, doesn't it?
It gets quite annoying, yeah, because there's been no discussion or permission for that to happen.
I mean, sometimes I find people who I consider to be prospects start tagging me in, and I'm quite flattered by that because it's like, they are thinking about me and they flag me up as somebody that they now see as belonging to their community. So I don't mind being tagged by some people, but it gets annoying when people tag you because you're on their target list, even though you've never spoken to them, or you've never actually had a conversation. I think that's when it becomes annoying.
Yeah, you've got to think about. I think everybody should try and map their behavior on LinkedIn to the real world. I mean, would you do that at a networking event? Would you kind of go and tap somebody on the shoulder that you didn't know and drag them into a conversation on the other side of the room? I mean, you'd at least have to introduce yourself and get to know them beforehand. It would be inappropriate to kind of just drag them by the arm without any invitation or prior knowledge. So we've got to kind of map what we do to real world behavior.
Yes. And I think that's a really important point because I think a lot of people forget that, yes, the rules are different online to a certain extent, but people are people, aren't they? People are no different online than they are offline.
Precisely. Yeah. It's, I mean, if you examine LinkedIn, it's actually an opportunity that we don't have in the real world. Because if you go back to kind of the world of traditional cold calling, you're going to get a gatekeeper answering the phone. You then need to use the various tactics that people teach. And I'm not decrying this at all. It's a valid, sales and marketing tactic. But you've then got to get past the gatekeeper and through to the decision maker.
Mm-hmm. And
normally that call is a sales call rather than ringing up. Hi, I'm just ringing up to start building a relationship with you.
Yes.
You kind of wouldn't do that. Now on LinkedIn, if you're clever about it, you can go and say, well, who is my target market? And you can go and find them.
Yeah.
And then there's something that a lot of people miss and they don't do. They should check whether that person is actively posting.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that person is actively posting, you could actually add them to a list, and that list would be your perfect networking event.
Yeah.
And during your perfect networking event with 30 prospective clients who are posting frequently on LinkedIn, you can go and attend that event whenever you wish. They will all be there because they'll be posting frequently.
Yeah.
You can comment on their posts. There's no gatekeeper in between you and that prospective client.
Mm-hmm.
In a real world networking event, you might only get maybe half a dozen people who are your ideal client in any room.
Yeah.
But you can use LinkedIn to create your own mini room, if you like, of your ideal prospects and communicate with them whenever you wish.
I like that idea. That's a nice idea, actually. Yeah, it's very, very good idea. So I think what a lot of people, where they get stuck, I think, is the messaging part, because I think, it's nice when you comment on people's posts, when you get to know them, maybe when you connect, you reach out to them, and you maybe you endorse them, or you comment on their post, they comment on your post, and you can feel like some nice kind of relationship or recognition going. Then obviously it also moves to the messages, and people have to be very careful in the messaging, don't they, Ian? What they say and how they say it.
Well, I believe so. I mean, I actually did a poll on LinkedIn. It might have been this year or towards the end of last year, and 87% of people stated that they either are annoyed or actually detest a message immediately after connecting, selling people services, because I think what people get wrong is that they try to cut out the relationship building stages.
Yes, I think people do that a lot.
And it's that's where you have to be careful, because there are so many people doing it in a very blunt way.
Very blunt.
Even if you're incredibly polite and your message is very well worded, it can still get the same reaction because it's just lumped into the same category as all of the people who connect then pitch. So it's something I think you have to be very careful with.
I think you have to be very careful, and I think I never send a message. I try never to send a message without also making a comment on somebody's recent posts, maybe endorsing them. And also, when I do send messages, I'm very try to be kind of very non-pushy about it, because having been on the receiving end, people say some amazing things. Hi, Jane, I'm going to get straight to the point. It's like, okay. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. It's just not fun, is it?
No, and I think I'm not saying don't message people, but maybe wait until there's at least the semblance of a relationship starting, where you've maybe commented on some of their posts, maybe they've reciprocated and commented on your posts. You can then, as you've done, you've referred to a previous conversation.
Yes.
At least that eases the opening. But you can do that through commenting on people's posts as well.
Yes.
You can build that relationship first.
Yes. So I'd love to get on to one of my favorite topics, which is systems, because I believe that all effective selling has to have a system behind it. What do you think about that, Ian?
Well, I completely agree with it, and I'm also conscious that a lot of people they're active on LinkedIn, they're doing a lot of the right things, but they're not really structured about it.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I advocate, in fact, as part of our forthcoming coaching program, don't worry, I'm not going into a big pitch here, we actually give everybody a kind of pre-built CRM style system where they can actually track the relationships they've built. And there's a slightly tree huggy element to it, in terms of we're recommending that people only connect with people where, when they read their posts, they feel a connection.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to be on the same page, the same wavelength. see the world through the same perspective as that individual, because one of the things we'll be doing is actually building a relationship with that person. And if you fundamentally disagree with their worldview, it's not going to quite work. The chemistry won't quite be there.
Yes.
It might not be the best client relationship, even if it did develop into an inquiry.
Yeah.
So,
Good point.
I mean, recently I practice what I preach, and somebody that had been commenting on their posts suddenly posted something. I'm not going to name names at all, but they posted something which was anti-immigration, which is not one of my core values. I didn't particularly agree with their worldview. So at that point, I stopped any relationship building with that individual because the tree huggy element had suddenly disappeared.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, because we want to align with people who we feel share our own values, right? I mean, there are things that we feel strongly about. And when you do get into a client relationship with somebody, you do end up spending quite a lot of time with them, and life is finite, right? Time is finite. So we want them to be people that we really resonate with, and they resonate with us, and values underpin that, don't they, Ian?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why in this system, it's about you need to feel it to begin with.
Yeah.
It's not all about spreadsheets and systems.
Yeah.
But then you do need to actually be structured with how you go about it.
Yes.
So the objective is to actually build resonance, and very sadly, and it's not quite spiritual, we actually have resonance points. So we actually measure the resonance that we're building with individuals. It's not meant to be scientifically accurate, but it's meant to give us a kind of benchmark. So once somebody's reached a certain number of points, we can then go and look at the relationship we've developed and see whether it's appropriate now to go to the next level and start the first step of a sales process.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, so far we've really been talking about solopreneurs or people who have relatively limited resources that do all the LinkedIn outreach themselves. But as you said, in your career, you've impersonated CEOs. And I have people that, they work on my social media and they be me as well, because people say, oh, you're everywhere, Jane. No, I'm not everywhere. I just seem to be everywhere because I work with people who have learnt my tone of voice, or at least they're attempting to learn it. And they're actually doing some of this work for me. So when how difficult is it when you've got a VA or you've got a marketing agency or whatever for them to actually copy your tone of voice? Is it, and that thing about resonance, because that's a very personal thing, isn't it?
Well, that's why for me it's the equivalent of ghostwriting somebody's life story. You need to actually research and know that individual intimately.
Yes.
Particularly for me when I do, and I don't actually actively pursue this work anymore.
No.
You have to go through a phase where you're actually running the draft ideas by that person.
Yeah.
You then test it against all of your research and say, would you say these sorts of things? And
Yes.
that's when you actually learn the language.
Yes.
You also have to give it to them in advance. So if there is anything that isn't their tone of voice, then they've got an opportunity to change it. But in an ideal world, really what you need to do is empower your sales team, if it's a larger organization, to follow the same relationship building principles.
Yes,
because
that's right.
It is much more genuine. I think there's always a danger when, in particular when it comes to commenting, that somebody doing it for you could be answering a comment from somebody that you haven't seen for 20 years. And they are basically answering it as if, you don't know them. So there are dangers with that sort of approach. There's some things that you can outsource, but only up to a certain degree, I think.
Yeah. I have when I say like quite a flowery style, I'm a bit of a people pleaser, I think, online. So I tend to be quite complimentary to people, and I say lots of nice things and lots of thank yous, and I just have that particular style. And I was working with a VA who was much, you know, she's from a different country where the communication style tends to be a bit blunter. So I would kind of read those comments. I think, you know, that actually sounds like a bit blunt or a bit rude or whatever. But it was really just, that was her culture, and that was how they behaved in her culture. But I realized what you said is absolutely right. You have to say, look, I am a flowery person. I say lots of nice things to people. I'm always complimenting and flattering. That's me.
Yeah.
So make sure whenever you answer a post that you're saying something nice so that they take away a little gift.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to, as much as possible, for the person who's kind of the face of the brand to
Yeah.
be as involved as they possibly can.
Yeah.
Equally, nowadays, there's you want to scale your business, and that's not always possible for you to spend
No.
all that time on social media. So it is a fine balancing act to get.
Yeah. And you know, I see a lot of people spending hours a day on LinkedIn, and I don't think that that is a good use of their time. And I'm wondering what you think about that, Ian, because, you know, if you're to keep all of these spreadsheets, and you're to fill them all in and do it in a very kind of detailed way, I mean, it is going to take quite a long time, isn't it, if you're prospecting seriously? So how long should you spend on LinkedIn every day, or actually on your kind of LinkedIn work?
Well, I've got a rule of thumb of about 4 to 5 hours per week, and
Uh-huh.
you can do all of it.
Okay.
You can do
So
more if you wish, but I would recommend that if you do more, it's still in that structured way.
yeah.
So you're not kind of getting lost in the news feed.
Yes.
You're actually
Yes.
engaging in activity that is productive for you
Yeah.
and people who are relevant to you. And that doesn't mean that you just focus solely on your target market, because the way social media works is that, with respect, the accounts clerk who comments on your post has just as much value as the silent CEO who never posts on LinkedIn at all, because that accounts clerk at a company with maybe 300 connections who are your target market is effectively becomes a salesperson. So you need to nurture relationships with a variety of people on LinkedIn, but don't just be completely focused on your target market. Although maybe you should be spending at least more than 50% of your time there. You do need to also nurture a supporting audience.
Yeah. And one of the things that I heard that really resonated with me was this thing about the silent likes, that there are people, and I've noticed this, people that I'm connected to, and they might pop up like once every 10 to 15 posts. They might do a little comment. And it's not that they're not seeing my posts, it's just that they select one that they particularly like, and then they'll comment on it,
Yeah.
because they are what's called the LinkedIn lurkers, right? So they're those people that they're consumers, really. They're not producers on LinkedIn. They go through it to see who's interesting, and then if they see something interesting, then they'll comment. But not everybody is very actively engaged, but it doesn't mean that your post isn't being seen, right? Or your content isn't being seen.
No, no, it isn't. And it's, I mean, there are many algorithm triggers on LinkedIn, and one of them is clicking see more. So if those kind of lurkers are clicking see more and they're reading the post, then you've also got an element called dwell time. So if they actually read the post through to fruition, perhaps even scan through the comments, even if they don't like or comment directly, they've still kind of persuaded LinkedIn that this post should be upgraded in its value and shown to more people.
Yes.
So
Yeah, so that's a really important point. So let's talk about the WhatsApp pods. I mean, I'm guilty of having it's more of a networking group, to be honest. It's just something as a resource for the members of my Smart Connector group. But people do go on there, and it is for people that use LinkedIn that are primarily on Facebook. So that's and in my group, in my Smart Connector group. So that's why I started this pod. So I've got like two little groups, and one of them is for people who are in property, because that's one of my businesses, and the other one is a more general one. So it's just there as a resource, but I don't tend to use it very often because I learned from you and Pam, who is your business partner, Ian, that it is not a good idea to put posts into WhatsApp groups. But why? If you can just explain that to our viewers and listeners, that would be very good.
Yeah, well, in terms of LinkedIn's terms of use, you can interpret that as going against their guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to quote it word for word because I don't read it all the time, but that's kind of attempting to game the algorithm, if you like. So it's technically frowned upon by LinkedIn. I think the jury is out on whether they're actually going to act on that, but there is every possibility that because it's in their terms, they could technically act upon that. And if they can detect that sort of activity, then there is a danger that they could do something about it and suspend people's accounts, for example. Now, that's not guaranteed to happen. This is just speculation, really. But when it is in their terms that they can do that, then you have to consider that. I don't think it does a great deal of harm in many respects, because a lot of these things are good networking activity. But I think a lot of it depends on how people come together in those groups, because some of them give that particular sector of the kind of grey area of LinkedIn a bad name, because a lot of the comments that you see on those posts are things like just great post or an emoticon thumbs up. So it doesn't look like genuine conversation. It looks like it's just people trying to game the algorithm. So really, I think the focus should be on people coming together to network genuinely. Like in one of the groups we run, which is focused on networking on Zoom in WhatsApp groups. We also have a community hashtag, so people can hashtag the posts, and then people from that community can find them. And unlike the typical pod, you select who you want to interact with from that community, but that's completely different. It's the other thing is that there are a lot of people who are against pods, and they're quite vocal about it, and they judge that activity a bit too harshly, I believe. I don't think it's that harmful, really, but
yeah,
it's.
I mean, what I was told is that LinkedIn can detect external activity from external links. So, in other words, if you put if you're outside of LinkedIn and you put a link to your LinkedIn post and it comes, say, from WhatsApp or whatever, that they can detect that and they will downgrade the reach of your post for that reason. That's what I was told. And that also, if you only have first degree connections and they're the same first degree connections all the time, then they will downgrade and it will just stifle the reach of your post. So what I think is that if you don't have much of an audience on LinkedIn, then I think it's great for just, a bit of morale. It's really nice just to get a few comments as opposed to just, post to crickets, as they say. So I think it's really good when you're a LinkedIn beginner and you're just building up some confidence and, just to kind of network and get a little bit of support. But I think personally that it's important to use it as a launch pad and then maybe just drop a post in every now and again for a little bit of a boost, perhaps. But really, there are no shortcuts to actually building your profile and your following on LinkedIn. You do have to, be consistent, and you do have to put quality content in there, and you do have to relate to other people and react to their posts as well. And as you said, actually build relationships. That is the way to do it, isn't it? Because if you just post, then you're missing a very important part of it, which is actually the way to get noticed by other people is also by engaging with them, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's that then comes back to content, really, because it's I think when people are starting on LinkedIn, and I understand this completely because I did it for many years and I got it wrong, and you tend to talk about yourself, your business, and you tend to angle it towards please buy from me, in other words.
Yeah.
And really what you've got to do is examine, for example, a trip to a cinema in a parallel universe.
Yes.
And in the parallel universe, what they do is they have the ad break.
Yes.
But it keeps on going. And the ad break actually becomes the movie. So you have the adverts, and then it breaks for 2 minutes to show you a little bit of the movie, and then it's back to the adverts.
Yeah.
That's the mistake a lot of people make on LinkedIn. Whereas really what you should be thinking about is creating conversations. So what conversations do my clients want to have? And it's not always about white papers and industry reports about their particular segment or sector. People are human beings. They'll only read so much of that in the news feed. Yeah, they'll be interested in their sector, but you can bet that they're going to be more interested in human stories and conversation.
Absolutely. And sometimes people are so narrow. I mean, I know one guy, and you may know of him as well, but he's he's an IT trainer. He's very successful, but his posts are all about what is your preferred way of using, and then he goes into some kind of technical term. And it's like, well, how can you answer that if you're not a complete geek? You're just talking to other geeks. And it just leaves me cold because I just don't know what to say to that. And I think that's the thing to avoid, really, isn't it? That you want to, keep it open enough that people just find you interesting and entertaining, as opposed to just like somebody wouldn't come up to you at a party and ask you that question, would they?
No, I mean, that's the issue. It's about mapping it again to the real world, because if you were at a networking event and that guy who always talks politics starts to sidle up to you, then pretty soon you actually develop a strategy of when you go to the networking event, you make sure that there's a lot of distance between you and that individual, because you can guarantee that they're going to talk politics. And
yeah,
that's what people tend to turn into. It's almost like a caricature of the worst possible networking delegate to meet. I don't blame people for it, because it is an unnatural environment. You've got a keyboard and a screen. It's not a real person. And it's like being in a sweet shop. They're all your potential clients. So that's what you're there for. You listen to what your brain says, which is, I need customers. But we need to realize it's a relay race, and the first 3 baton changes are about building a relationship before you get to the line.
Yeah, definitely. And people say to me, well, they get really cross at people pitching to them in the first message and so on. And I just think, you know what? There's no reason to get cross, is there? Because these people, they're just clumsy communicators because they haven't really learnt the rules. And I think the more you engage with any social media platform, the more you start to learn its rules. And if you've been on it for a while, and if you have, you're consistently engaging with it, and LinkedIn is my number one platform, that's the one where I am nearly every day. Then after a while, you do start to understand the rules. And I've got a 3,500 member Facebook group. So I'm also on Facebook. The rules on Facebook and the posts that I put on Facebook are very different to the ones that I put on LinkedIn, because it's just, people have different expectations and much more they're more kind of like chatty and more sort of informal. Well, I'll say like informal. The ones on LinkedIn maybe are, but the ones on LinkedIn, they're a bit more purposeful, or they're disruptive in a I would say quite a deliberate way. So polarizing, because polarizing for me, that not using politics, not anything kind of too controversial, but those kind of polarizing posts, they tend to do very, very well on LinkedIn. Whereas I think Facebook, it's just kind of more inclusive, really. It's more kind of like chatty, and that's my view anyway.
Yeah, well, I think when it comes to things like polarizing views, I would only do that if that's what you do outside of
Yeah.
LinkedIn. If that's your character and you like to have these heated discussions, then that's where you should be on LinkedIn as well. But if you're not, then I'd tread carefully, because you then start to become a different person than the person that prospective client will ultimately meet. So there'll be a level of incongruence between the way you have been online and the way you are when you meet for real. So I think it's always important to be a reflection of who you truly are.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, what I've kind of experimented with, I'm not a particularly polarizing person. As I said, I'm a people pleaser. I want to be loved by everybody. So
Yeah.
so my first instinct is just to be popular, because that's what I like. But what I found is that I found that I can ask polarizing questions, which is great, because you can step away without necessarily being the person in the middle or coming down, either side. And if you can actually let people kind of argue it out, then that's pretty good, because that's when it goes viral, and it's not necessary. Nobody's really pointing the finger at you and saying, I don't agree with her views, because you just asked the question. So I think there's definitely an art to it. And it's quite hard, because if I could do that every day, I probably would, because then my LinkedIn would absolutely explode and I get 80,000 views every day. But it's quite hard, because you've got to hit the zeitgeist, I think.
Yeah, and I can see a number of people who are kind of being deliberately controversial, deliberately polarizing,
Yeah.
using. There's one guy who actually uses the same poll every day.
Really?
I don't know how it's still being shown, but
Wow.
it seems to be lowering now. But he's still getting 2,000 to 3,000 votes on the poll, and
What is the poll? Are you allowed to say, or was that giving the game
uh,
away?
he's doing things like give the game away, really. But he's asking really baity questions, which
Uh-huh.
you almost can't resist answering.
Okay.
I think
Yes.
it's drawn me in as well, and then I see it again. Think that's the same poll, but it's only 3 hours old. I did that last week. I never
Yeah.
thought to notice it. He does maybe 3 or 4 of the same polls every day, and
Wow.
his followers are up in the hundreds of thousands now.
Really?
But I don't see what brand that particular individual has developed or
No.
what reputation has developed.
I mean, I
It's
think, yeah, I think when it kind of comes in useful for me anyway to have followers. So I do an event, a monthly live event, and that's about all I can manage is one live event, because I'm doing a lot of digital and automated stuff as well. But I have this event, and of course, when you post an event on LinkedIn, you can invite all of your first degree connections up to, I think it's 500 a week, something like that.
Yeah, I've not
So
done it for a few months. I think it was the last time I did an event. It was the limit was 1,000 per
mm,
event. It may
yeah.
well have changed.
Yeah, I think it's 500 a week at the moment, which is quite a lot. So if you're doing it like once a month, that means you can invite 2,000 people to an event.
Yeah,
And so every month I get a pretty decent show up rate, because you can also choose who you invite to it. So I think for me anyway, the reason for actually steadily building your connections is because if you combine it with an event, and with my event, I've got a whole automated back end sequence. So I've got all the reminders that go out. I mean, people, they really do hear from me before that event, and they also hear from me after that event. So I can kind of combine it with my automated system, and I'm finding that is very effective. So I like the way that you can combine those events with the digital marketing, the automation as well. So I'd love to ask about the automation, Ian, because there are automation tools, and there are plenty of people that use automation tools in the messaging on LinkedIn, and I know that it's against LinkedIn's rules and so on, but I also know that a lot of people that use them. So what's your view on the automation done well? Because automation can be done very badly, and we can all spot it when it's being done badly, but people do use it, and they do use it to good effect. So what do you think?
What do I think? Well, I think you're taking a big risk to begin with, because if you are detected, then technically you can lose your account. Nowadays, for a lot of people, that could be devastating to their business.
Devastating.
Scratch again, if they're allowed to, because I've heard of some people who have tried to start again, but they're being taken off once more because previously banned. I can understand, and I'm talking from LinkedIn's perspective, really, because my guess is that automation affects their bandwidth, because if they allowed everybody to automate, then most people would, or a lot of people would. They would automate, word would get around, it would be acceptable. And then you've got all of these robots with 600 million people constantly putting all those demands on the LinkedIn servers. It's going to slow down to a crunching halt, I would guess. So that's probably one of the reasons they do that. So in terms of automating messages, I think it's a tricky area in terms of, if you're selling to people, then really they haven't opted in. If you've got your email list and people have opted in genuinely, then that's okay. I think within GDPR rules, it's probably okay to message people, but whether or not you should is a different matter. So I question the value of messaging people en masse using automation. It's a tricky one. I mean, I'd probably recommend that people don't go down that route if I was to give one recommendation. I think there's too many dangers.
I mean, I often say, when I say my clients, I mean, these are people who are, they are looking for done for you services, because not everybody that I work with, wants to do it all themselves. So particularly if they highly value their time and they're very, very busy, they often want to have a done for you solution instead. So I often say to them that it is really better for them to have a really robust system. And as long as they are able to give the right instructions to a VA, then the VA can do that job very, very well for them. But they have to know how to work with a VA, and they have to know how to manage a VA, don't they? And that's where a lot of people go wrong. And I've got to say that I haven't found it particularly easy as well, because that all comes down to systems, doesn't it? And you really do have to be on top of it. The best people to manage VAs are kind of engineers and people and tech people, because they know how to do all of that, because their brains just work in that way anyway. I'm a little bit too creative, and at times that can make it a little bit hard.
And then again, I think that's a grey area. I think technically you're not allowed to give other people access to your account, but
well, I mean, everybody does it that I know.
Everybody does it, and it's maybe that's a step too far, and I can't really imagine them enforcing that, to be honest.
No,
but it is there in the if you go and dig through all of those terms and conditions, it does say it somewhere that you're not allowed to have other people accessing your account.
Well, I
But
suppose, look, I mean, people are going to find a way, aren't they? Because you know, if you're a business, and if you need to make those connections on LinkedIn, then you have to have staff, don't you? You have to have people that work for you somehow, and actually, you know, do they keep it moving? If you're the CEO of a business, you can't be spending all your day, and it's a big business, you can't be spending all your day on your LinkedIn account, can you? So, of course, they must know that it goes on. It seems a bit
yeah.
unreasonable.
I mean, I do believe that a solopreneur can probably do everything they need, probably within about 4 to 5 hours a week,
Yeah,
sometimes less. You can actually do more. And I would argue, in fact, that doing more is a good thing as well, because if it's relevant, then you can actually grow more quickly. But there does come a point when some tasks on LinkedIn you might wish to use a VA for. It's things like building a list of the people that you're communicating with, people who are target customers, people that you like as well.
yeah,
You know, my tree hugging analogy, really don't really build fake relationships, only build relationships with people that, you know, you see some chemistry with as well.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but some of those things you can get others to do for you. But commenting, I would say, is really difficult for a VA to do on your behalf,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
slightly dangerous in some ways. Post writing, okay, but again, you probably need to go through a good ghostwriting type
oh,
process for them to actually reflect who you are.
yeah. I mean, I recently had some blogs written for me. I didn't really ask for them to be written, but they just came as part of a package that they were doing something else. So, and I read this blog and I thought I could tell straight away that it was written by somebody in India. Now I
Yeah,
know it does no I'm not sort of saying that that is a bad thing, but they Indian English, the way that they speak English in India is more formal, or the way they write it, and so it's not my style. It just doesn't sound like me. So I had to kind of completely rework that and kind of send it back.
yeah,
But I can always tell blogs that are written by people overseas because they just read differently.
yeah. That's where it's. You do need to pay good writers if you want good quality work, which
Yeah.
also reflects who you are as an individual, or what your brand wants to represent. Then
Yeah, or you have to be willing to rewrite it, which, you know,
yeah,
by the time you've rewritten it, sometimes it takes as long as if you'd written it yourself.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So Ian, any last tips before we go? What are your three top tips for success on LinkedIn?
Well, I think it's connect, comment, and post. Do those
Okay.
three things. Uh, I would argue that at the moment, I would suggest that commenting should be higher up the agenda for
Uh-huh.
most people, because we all naturally focus on ourselves and what we want to say.
Uh-huh.
But commenting has far more power and impact than we give it credit for. It
Yeah.
is like going to the networking event, listening to somebody, because you make an impact when you listen to people and give them a reaction to what they're saying.
Yeah.
And we can do that by commenting on the posts of people that we wish to build a relationship with.
Yeah.
The next one is posting, but focus on conversation, the conversations that your customers want to have. And finally, it's connecting. And a lot of people have got a problem with connecting or accepting inbound requests. But, you know, for example, if somebody looks to connect with you and they've got, for argument's sake, 5,000 connections, and your target is lawyers, you now have 50 more lawyers that you can connect with.
Mm-hmm.
And if they start to comment on your posts, then those 50 lawyers will see that message. So there's no reason not to accept an inbound request. And also outbound, you need to connect with the people who are your target market. One of the fundamentals of the LinkedIn algorithm is first degree connections appear on your newsfeed and
Yeah.
vice versa. So you need to be connected to increase the chances of those people seeing your message. So those three things: connect, comment, and post.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ian, for joining us. Now, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, wants to take it kind of further in terms of your LinkedIn membership or training or whatever, what is the best way for them to get hold of you? I'm assuming LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, LinkedIn. It's Ian Denny. I don't think there's many Ian Denny's on LinkedIn.
That's always an advantage. I don't think there's another Jane Baylor. I think there's about one or two Jane Baylors in the world that I've discovered. So that's pretty handy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Always good to have an unusual name.
Yeah, well, it's in my URL as Ian Denny, so I was there first. I claimed it
Ian
first.
Denny, amazing. Okay, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Ian. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you and also to be in your group. So I've learned a lot myself about LinkedIn, and I often pass on some of your wisdom and tips to my audience even though I'm not a LinkedIn trainer myself, but people do ask me about social media a lot. So, thank you so much for all your wisdom and experience and tips tonight. It's been really great.
Well, thank you. That was a huge compliment that you pass on those tips.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.